President Donald Trump visited Saudi Arabia. He arrived in Riyadh on May 13, 2025. This was his first big trip to another country during his second time as president. The welcome he got was very special, like the one he had in 2017. When Air Force One got close to the airport, 6 Saudi fighter jets flew beside it. This was a special sign of respect and showed the Saudi government's warm welcome. When he landed, there was a long purple carpet on the ground. This purple carpet is a new tradition in Saudi Arabia. It means the flowers of the desert and shows kindness to guests. President Trump walked on the carpet after he left the plane. He wore a purple tie that matched the carpet. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman was there to greet him. The two leaders met and talked. President Trump told reporters that he thought they liked each other a lot. This showed a strong friendship between them. They sat down and drank traditional Arabic coffee. During this meeting, they signed many important papers. These papers were about working together on things like the military, law, and culture. Later, President Trump said that Saudi Arabia is the United States' strongest friend in the Middle East. The welcome for President Trump was much bigger and warmer than the one President Joe Biden got in 2022. For President Trump, it was a grand royal welcome. News said that hard topics like human rights were not talked about much that day. Instead, they focused on business deals and the friendship between the two leaders. The Crown Prince smiled a lot and shook hands warmly with President Trump. On this first day, there were also big business meetings. Many important business leaders from America were there. They talked about making very large deals. President Trump used these meetings to share his plans for the region. He announced a very big plan to sell weapons to Saudi Arabia. This plan was worth many billions of dollars. Saudi Arabia also said it would invest a lot of money in the United States. This big welcome and these meetings showed the world that Saudi Arabia's doors were open again. They wanted visitors and business, especially from America. The day was about showing friendship and making important agreements for the future. There was a big meeting in Riyadh for business leaders from the United States and Saudi Arabia. Many important company leaders were there with President Trump. President Trump spoke to the business people. He said the United States and Saudi Arabia are very strong partners in the Middle East. He also talked about his plans for the region. He said the United States would end all rules against Syria that were still in place. He said this would give Syria a chance to become strong again after many years of fighting. At the meeting, a very big deal was announced. The United States would sell a large amount of weapons to Saudi Arabia. This was a very large arms package. The deal was for $142 billion. People said this was the biggest sale of weapons the United States has ever made. News from Saudi Arabia said that Saudi Arabia would pay for these weapons slowly over many decades. They also said Saudi Arabia would pay for the deal with their own money. Saudi Arabia also promised to invest a lot of money in the United States. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman said Saudi Arabia had already promised to invest about $600 billion in the U.S. This money includes investments from Saudi Arabia's main investment fund. When President Trump heard this number, he said he wanted even more money invested. He said a goal of $1 trillion would be even better. He said Saudi leaders had agreed to try to reach this $1 trillion goal. But some people were not sure about these very big numbers. Some experts who study money and business said they did not believe the $1 trillion number. They said no official person from Saudi Arabia had confirmed that $1 trillion was the plan. There were also questions about the big arms deal. Some people wondered if all the money would really be paid and how it would happen over such a long time. Many important business leaders came with President Trump to Saudi Arabia. Among them were leaders from big computer companies. For example, the head of ENGAGELIT was there. He talked about a big deal for new computer technology. His company will sell more than 18,000 special computer chips to a Saudi company called Humane. These chips are very important for new computer technology like AI, which means artificial intelligence. Saudi Arabia wants to build many big data centers. These centers need a lot of powerful chips. This deal shows that Saudi Arabia wants to grow its economy in new ways. They want to be leaders in technology, not just sell oil. This is part of their plan for the future. Leaders from both countries also spent time talking about energy. They discussed oil and gas. They talked about how the United States and Saudi Arabia can work together on energy projects. This included building pipelines to move oil and gas. They also looked at new kinds of energy for the future. This includes energy from the sun, called solar energy, and energy called hydrogen. Working together on energy is very important for both the United States economy and Saudi Arabia's plans. President Trump also talked about the price of oil. He asked Saudi Arabia and other oil-selling countries to lower the price. He asked the group called OPEC to sell more oil. President Trump said that lower oil prices are good for many countries around the world. He also said cheaper oil could help end the war in Ukraine. He believes lower oil prices are very good for people and businesses in the United States. But Saudi Arabia has its own ideas about oil prices and selling oil. They want to keep their place as a main oil seller in the world market. They plan to sell more oil in the future. Recently, they quietly announced plans to add hundreds of thousands more barrels of oil each day. They also lowered the price of their oil a little for countries in Asia. People who study the oil market say Saudi Arabia wants to sell a lot of oil to keep their market share strong. They are okay if the price is a little lower for some time to make sure they sell more than other countries. The talks included important ideas about the future of technology and energy for both countries. President Trump also talked about Iran during his visit. He spoke strongly about Iran's nuclear plans. He said clearly that Iran must never have a nuclear weapon. This was very important for him and for Saudi Arabia. Trump also offered a different way forward for Iran. He said there could be a new and better way to make a deal. He said he was open to talks with Iran. He even said, "I don't like permanent enemies," showing he wanted to try to find a solution by talking. However, Trump gave a serious warning too. He said if Iran did not want to talk or make a deal, he would put very strong pressure on them. This could mean stopping Iran from selling oil to other countries completely. Trump said he could reduce Iran's oil exports to zero. People who watch the Middle East thought a lot about this. Some believe Iran might actually want to talk with Trump. They think this because Trump is seen as a leader who can make deals. Some people in Iran think Trump is the only leader who can make a deal. Iran's foreign minister even said that talking with Trump could be good for Iran, calling it a strategic win-win. But it is not clear if a new deal will happen. It is hard to know what Trump would agree to. For example, would he allow Iran to do some nuclear work? Some people in the U.S. government and Congress are not sure about a new deal. One official said a new deal like the old one might not get enough votes. So making a deal is very difficult. Iran also spoke about Trump's trip to Saudi Arabia. Someone from Iran said that Trump coming to Saudi Arabia was not good news for peace in the region. So, the situation with Iran is complicated. Trump wants to stop Iran from getting nuclear weapons. He offers talks and a deal, but warns of strong pressure if that does not happen. It is not known if a deal will happen or if pressure will be used. The trip showed that the U.S. and Saudi Arabia agree on being strong against Iran. This agreement was an important part of the talks. The future of Iran's nuclear program is still a big question. 5 hopes for peace. President Trump talked about peace in the Middle East during his visit. He said it was a big goal for him. He called it a dream to see Saudi Arabia and Israel become friends. This means Saudi Arabia would officially accept Israel as a country. Joining the Abraham Accords group would be one way to do this. The Abraham Accords are agreements where some Arab countries have made peace with Israel. But Saudi Arabia has a clear opinion about this. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman explained Saudi Arabia's view. He said peace with Israel cannot happen until the war in Gaza ends. He said there must be a negotiated end to the fighting. He also said the Palestinian people must have their own country. So for Saudi Arabia, stopping the fighting in Gaza and making a state for the Palestinians are needed before they can make peace with Israel. This shows that the Gaza situation is very important for Saudi Arabia's decision. President Trump also talked a little about the people living in Gaza. He spoke about the victims of the fighting there. He said the people in Gaza deserve a better future. He said the attacks on October 7 by Hamas made peace harder to reach. He seemed to blame these attacks for the current problems and for stopping the hope of peace. Palestinian leaders watched the trip closely. The main Palestinian representative at the United Nations is Riyad Mansour. He said he was happy that President Trump was visiting the region. Mr. Mansour said he hoped the trip could help stop the fighting in Gaza. He told reporters he prayed that President Trump's visit would help them achieve a ceasefire. A ceasefire means that the fighting stops completely. He also hoped the trip would help create a path to freedom for the Palestinian people. He talked about safety for everyone and a good future for the whole region. In Israel, the Prime Minister is Benjamin Netanyahu. He also spoke about the situation and the trip. He said he was talking closely with American officials. But he made it clear that Israel would protect itself. He said strongly that Israel will defend itself on its own. He added that if other countries join, like their American friends, that would be helpful. But his main message was that Israel will always work to keep itself safe. People who study the Middle East said that even though the trip was mostly about business deals and investments, everyone was also watching the big questions. They wanted to see if the United States had a plan to end the war in Gaza. They also wanted to know if there was a plan for a new agreement with Iran about its nuclear program. These are two very difficult issues in the Middle East. The trip brought some hope for peace talks, but it also showed how different the ideas are between the sides about how to make peace. There are many challenges on the road to peace. Good news for some were peace. Back in the United States, the news from President Trump's trip made some people happy. People who work with the president in the White House were pleased. They saw the deals and agreements made in Saudi Arabia as a success. They said the trip was good for America. They believed the many business deals would help the U.S. economy. They said it would bring more jobs and money to the country. This was part of President Trump's plan called America First. His team felt the trip showed this plan was working well. The U.S. military also saw the trip in a positive way. They liked the stronger relationship with Saudi Arabia. They thought it was important for the safety of America and the Middle East. Military leaders thought working closely with Saudi Arabia was a good step. One important decision made during the trip was about Syria. The United States decided to lift some rules called sanctions that were put on Syria before. This meant some old limits on Syria were removed. This decision about Syria had support from some people in America, even politicians not in President Trump's party. For example, one important senator from the Democratic Party said it was a good chance for Syria. She hoped it could help Syria start to rebuild after many years of war. She also thought it could help stop countries like Russia and Iran from getting too much power in Syria. Some experts who know a lot about the Middle East agreed. They said lifting the sanctions could help rich countries in the Middle East send money to Syria. This money could be used to fix buildings and cities that were destroyed. So, for these people, the news about Syria was a positive step from the trip. Overall, people close to President Trump and some others in America saw the trip as having good results. They focused on the business deals, stronger military ties, and the change in policy towards Syria as good news for the United States and its place in the world. 7 worries back home. Back in the United States, the trip caused some worries. Human rights groups were not happy. They said President Trump did not talk about Saudi Arabia's poor human rights record. Critics felt he ignored problems like how people are treated in the country. Some thought President Trump was being too friendly with Saudi leaders. They remembered his first visit when there was a big welcome and party. These critics said he seemed to be too nice to a leader who does not allow much freedom. They felt the president should be stronger about human rights issues. There were also questions about money. Saudi Arabia plans to invest a lot in the U.S. But people who watch government actions said some of this money went to businesses owned by Trump and his family. This caused worry. Was the president's friendly feeling toward Saudi Arabia connected to his own business? This is called a conflict of interest, and it is a serious concern for some people. Many Americans were not sure about Trump's foreign policy. Surveys showed more than half of voters did not approve of how he handled other countries. Even if the trip to Saudi Arabia was not the main thing people thought about, the feeling of doubt about his international plans was there. Another specific worry was about a plane. The country of Qatar gave a large Boeing 747 plane. It was planned to be used as a presidential plane like Air Force One for Trump. This gift made many people in the U.S. government angry. People from both President Trump's party and the other party were upset. They thought taking the plane might not be legal. Mr. Trump talked about the plane during his flight. He said if America gives free things to other countries, it should also accept free things. But people who work for him later said this was not his plan. He had promised to use planes made in America. Leaders in the U.S. Congress also spoke about these worries. Some said Saudi leaders had not really changed on human rights. They said America should ask Saudi Arabia to free political prisoners. Other leaders said trade with countries like Saudi Arabia should not help governments that treat their people badly. So while the trip showed big deals and friendly meetings, it also brought worries back home. Worries about human rights, money and business ties, and Mr. Trump's general approach to other countries. These concerns were important for many Americans and their leaders in government. The trip was seen differently by different people in America. 8. The trip's big questions. The trip to Saudi Arabia finished. People in different countries thought about what happened with Iran. Some people were worried. They did not like the strong friendship between the United States and Saudi Arabia. People who help others in Gaza watched closely. They hoped the trip could help stop the fighting or bring more help for the people there. Countries in Europe also had different ideas. Some felt the trip was good because it showed the U.S. was a strong partner. Others thought the trip could make it harder to talk with countries like Iran. President Trump saw the trip as a big success. He talked about the many business deals that were made. He said these deals were very good for the United States. He felt the trip showed the U.S. was strong and could make important agreements with other countries. But many other people had worries. Groups that work for human rights were not happy. They said the trip did not focus enough on problems with human rights in Saudi Arabia. They felt being too friendly with Saudi leaders was not right when there were serious issues. The big problems in the region were still there. The war in Gaza was still going on. The question of Iran having nuclear weapons was still important. These were big issues that the trip talked about but did not fully solve. After the trip, people asked many questions. What would be the real results? Would the big deals really happen and help people? Would the trip make peace more possible? Or would it make things more difficult? It was not clear what the future would bring. The trip showed different ideas about what is most important in the world: business and power, or human rights and helping people in need. What do you think was the most important part of this trip? Hey there, just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second and really helps us create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you. Thanks for sticking around till the end of the story. Don't forget to like, comment, write, and subscribe so you never miss a new story. Have a wonderful day. Take care and see you soon. This video is brought to you by ENGAGELIT.